question I get asked a lot is, West Coast, how much do I need of this to get so much of that? You know, what are the numbers? What's the percentages? How much, you know, what are the ratios? So what we're going to do today, we're going to go over some of the ratios that I use. This is not an exact science, but it's pretty close. If you want to try to figure out the exact ratios, go right ahead, but there's no need to. These rule of thumbs will pretty much give you exactly what you need to be able to make proper mashes and figure out how much moonshine that you're going to get out of these mashes. So one of the first basic things that you need to understand is how much sugar you're going to get out of stuff. Well, of course, if you're going to use pure sugar, or just say corn syrup, or something that is just 100% sweetener, you're going to get pretty much a 1-to-1 ratio. I mean, all of this sugar is going to be converted into alcohol. And you're going to add a little bit of water to that, so you're going to get a little bit more total alcohol out of there, because the proof won't be a straight 100 proof. Now, if you're using a fruit juice, this is not 100% sugar, so your ratio is not going to be that high. You're going to, there's about this much actual sugar in here, so you're going to get a mash about that much total alcohol out of this whole container if you were to use it. But that does mean that you can add some more sugar to it and get a stronger batch. Now, if you're using a frozen concentrate, the sugar content is quite a bit higher, and I would mix concentrates stronger, meaning I use less water than what the directions call for. But even then, to take a shortcut, I won't have all fruit concentrate. I will have diluted it with some sugar water, just as long as there's a basic taste in that mash. That works for me, but some people might differ and they want to use 100% fruit, 100% corn, or something else. Now, when using corn or cornmeal, the formula that I come up with is that for roughly every 5 pounds of corn that you use, you're going to get roughly 1 pound of sugar. Now, this equation is not right, but it's a very close approximation of what you can expect. But I would say, as a close approximation, you're going to get 1 to 2 pounds of sugar for every 5 pounds of grain that you use, be it corn, be it rice, or other grains. That's why I usually add extra sugar to all of my grain-based mashes, except for rice whiskey, which I want to keep rice whiskey as authentic as possible. Now, if you were to add cornstarch to your corn, you could count this as a 100% conversion, because it's all a 100% substance. This is, from top of the box to the bottom of the box, this is 100% cornstarch. And I would expect all of this to be converted into sugar. Whereas the cornmeal has the starch in it, but you also have the kernels and other pieces, the fibrous parts of the corn, that are going to be tossed out later on. So that's why you can't count this as a 1-to-1 ratio to get sugar. This, on the other hand, would give you a 1-to-1 ratio, converting your starch into sugar. Now, when mixing your mashes, or a wine or something to make into moonshine, how much sugar to water do you need? Well, there's a very simple calculation that's pretty close. There's no need to narrow it down any further than this. And that is that the best yeast that you can buy is only going to give you a maximum of 20% alcohol in any mash, any wine, any beer. After 20%, the yeast will die off. So, going back to plain old sugar, if I was going to take 1 full unit here of sugar, I would add an additional 4 units the same size of water, and at the end you would have 20% alcohol, 80% water. You're not going to get any stronger than this, so there's no need to try. So if I was going to have 5 pounds of sugar, I could replace 1 pound of sugar with 5 pounds of corn. So no matter what kind of container you use, whether you're using a container this big or you're using a container this big, the ratio is still the same. You simply fill this 1/5 of the way with sugar, whatever your sugar is coming from, and the rest of it you fill with water. Same with this container. You take 1/5 of it, fill it full of sugar, and the rest of it you fill it full of water. Anything stronger than that is going to be a waste of sugar. Now, another question that people are going to ask is, how much yeast are you going to use? Well, you could pretty much use any amount of yeast that you want. It's just a question of how much yeast do you want to add. For me, I try to add as little as yeast as possible, but still have it be effective and not wait a month for it to finish. Meaning I don't want the taste of yeast in my mash, so I use it sparingly, but still use enough that I'm not waiting forever for it. So a mash, no matter how much yeast that you're going to add, is going to take at least about a week. So there's no need to add a lot of yeast, but you want to add a minimal amount of yeast. So on average, I add about a tablespoon of yeast per gallon of water. It doesn't really need any more, and you don't want to use really any less. Another main question is, how do you know when your mash is done? Well, it's very simple. You just open up the container, take a look, and if it's done bubbling, then your mash is done. But there are things that you can look at and gauge and see how much you can add or subtract for your next mash. For instance, knowing that sugar is sweet and knowing that sugar is being converted into alcohol, you can just simply taste your mash and detect sweetness in there, and from that sweetness you'll know how much sugar is left and how much alcohol you're getting. And if your mash is done bubbling, but you taste it and you're still detecting some sweetness left in it, then you can cut back on the sugar a little bit on the next run that you do. But for all practical purposes, when your mash is done bubbling, your mash is ready.